Good morning. So, let's see here. I said we do spell projectiles, and I think I'm right. I think that is what is going to be what we do. Shouldn't be too hard. We should have time for starting something else, or at least talking about starting something else and putting a little more content in. You'll note my starter time looks a little pathetic for starters, but that's fine because mostly this building is just a test, and the rest of the terrain is just me trying to figure out what looks good and what I like. So we'll get there eventually. I actually kind of want to switch the grass out for this real quick, just because the stuff that's currently there looks more like it should be in a forest of some kind. And I've also got a dog barking in the background, which is, let's see here. I'm actually going to shift a bunch of these out of their folders because it seems a little silly to have them out here or have them in here. There we go. Get the grass ones out of here at least. Oh, interesting. We've got different levels of dirt and grass mixture. Well, I'm gonna stick with the full grass for now. Maybe we'll go with a little less than full. Should be good enough for us. Now, if we select that and put in... Interesting how it's much more washed out in comparison. I'm actually not a huge fan of that. Problem is it doesn't really look like there's a much better way to handle it. So the other thing we can do, and this is something I do a lot when I get pre-made assets that don't quite look right or don't match the way I want them to, one of the easiest things to do is, yeah, that almost looks like, I don't know. It just looks too washed out. I'm not a fan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop in. We're going to crack this open in paint.net and just crank up the saturation values and even it out a little bit so it looks decent. There we go. I just don't like the washed out look that it was providing for us. See, already, that little change alone makes it look so much better. It actually still looks a little too bright, but I'm willing to kind of give it some slack. If anything, I might crank it up a little bit more. Take the contrast, turn it up more, and then also turn up the brightness to match. So we get some deeper colors, but we still don't have that washed out look. Also, it might be possible to mess with our color curves to bring up the saturation to make it look a bit better. There we go. Let's see how that looks in Unity. See, that looks a lot more grassy to me. Screams grass quite a bit more. Now the only other thing I'm noticing is the fact that this looks very realistic and this does not. Even though this is a hand-painted texture, it has so much detail into it that it just doesn't look quite as good. Let's see if I thought I had one other texture. Oh, I know where I did. I thought I had another texture in a different texture pack that I needed to grab. This one. Oh, I have to remove myself from play mode, of course. Otherwise I can't import things. What happened to the old map? The old map's still around. It's just sitting in the, it's in the test map more than anything else. So I'm gonna go back to it for the today's testing stuff, but in terms of getting stuff down to start with, just hoping to make a few content changes first. Kind of let people filter in while I get stuff done. Let's see. Here is our terrain. Hit edit. See how this one looks. It's actually a little too saturated almost, but it does match, I think, a lot better. Game. Interesting. I've got a bunch of broken links in the grid system. This is what I get for not calculating them all correctly. Nope, you're fine. Oh, it's these though. Very bizarre that some of these require the extra amount of work. Alright, well, it looks a bit better. How much money have I spent on this game up to this point? Let's see. Between the... So most of the money's gone into the 3D models, honestly. I think I've spent the better part of $500 or $600 on the 3D models. The rest of it has been pretty cheap in comparison, especially since I've done a lot of this by hand and found a lot of stuff that is either cheap or piecemeal, so I can put it together as I please. So in the case of the terrain and such, I actually haven't really spent more than like 50 or 60 bucks. Most of the stuff I've found is free and actually looks a lot better when I start attaching other textures I already own to it. So for example, this fountain, excuse me, one sec, dog. Sorry, as I was saying, the terrain hasn't cost a ton. Most of it is, more than anything else, just all gone into the 3D models for the monsters and things that are animated mostly. Non-animated things don't cost nearly as much as animated stuff. Oh, dog. Yeah, I'm afraid he doesn't like the garbage truck, which you may or may not be able to hear. I actually fine-tuned the microphone lately, so hopefully it sounds a little bit better and doesn't pick up as much background noise. But yeah, in terms of just pure money into this game, yeah, it's a bit. But if you consider that this is kind of my primary hobby, and that, where'd that, oh, I know where that grass texture went. Considering this is my primary hobby, this is where most of the other things I do go. Like, most of my other hobbies don't really cost me a ton of money, so it's not all that bad for me to, in my mind, spend money on this. Plus, this is something really cool that helps push my job forward, too. If I decide that I need to publish a demo scene early, and I put the demo scene onto my portfolio, it looks pretty friggin' impressive what I can do with other people's assets. There we go. What? Twitch still says Rocket League. Gosh darn it. Game development. This is what I get for playing Rocket League. Although Rocket League was friggin' awesome. Thank you again to those who joined me yesterday. It is just friggin' amazing. Lots of fun. There we go. Darken it up ever so slightly. The only thing I don't like is how easy it is to see the tiled nature of this this texture, but I think it's better. Actually don't know if it's better or not than the other one. Let's just leave it in for now, just so I can move on, do other things. There we go. I can walk a lot more freely in this back area now. I need to put down more houses, honestly. Alright, so back to our test scene. So save this out. The one marked games scene is generic enough that it's just, hey, this is testing. So let's see. We want to make projectiles that we can attach to spells. So the most obvious starter thing we can do is, I'm going to make a new folder in here for our spell effects. And for now, we're going to start with something incredibly simple. I'm actually just going to take a 3D sphere that Unity already made, way too high poly for its own good, but that's okay. We are going to scale this sucker down to something decently small. I don't think I need a sphere collider on it, so we'll rip that out for now. And I guess we'll just leave it a white shiny ball for now. We'll come back and fix the look of it later. Maybe eventually we'll also attach some like fire effects and other cool things to it, make it a flame sphere, but one thing at a time. So first off, okay, let's switch this from a scripted NPC node to a scripted fight. Don't have any pre-combat text, don't have any post-combat text. I just want some monsters, and that should be all I really need. Now I've got some monsters that can cast spells, so I'm going to put them in here specifically. Let's see here. I know that the Demon Imp, I'm pretty sure he has a cast spell. I also think that the, what is it, the fairy? Pretty sure she has a cast spell as well. And I'll just leave it at those two. I'll put another imp in just for kicks. And if I shift their order around, that'll keep them in the right spot. So I take a step forward and hey, it's a fairy and a couple imps. Sweet. So now, when we cast a spell, we have to have some information attached to that spell. So the spells themselves, we should probably attach some kind of prefab to this. Give them access to a reference to a prefab so that they can instantiate things, or so that they have references to things that we can instantiate. And essentially all we're going to do is take whatever object happens to exist in the system, and we'll just project it between the 2 points and be done with it. Nothing too terribly fancy. Let's see here. Spell target, spell... Okay, here's all this other stuff. Let's see here. So we need a projectile template. And that's kind of the easy part, because the projectile itself should take care of its own casting, for lack of better words. So we're going to create a new C# script. It is going to be a spell actually, I'm just going to call it projectile. Mesh projectile, just so that it's easy to recognize. So that if somebody shoots an arrow, I can use the arrow flying at the player. I can use this class for the same thing. So we're going to put an initialize function in here, because it needs a bunch of information, right? We need the start, the end position, we need the speed, or inversely the amount of time that it's going to take to get to its target. And I think that should be it for now. And we'll leave the update call in, obviously, because we want some of those details as well. And the reason I'm using an initialize function over just marking these all public is that it's easier for me to generate an object and simply call a single function instead of setting each variable specifically. If it turns out it's going to be messy, then maybe instead I'll simply swap it back, but otherwise, for now, I'm liking the initialize function as a public thing that I can call. So we've got our public functions and our Unity functions. Pretty straightforward. And this is fairly simple as well. Just set the start position, set the end position, and set the time. Time alive should be defaulted to 0, obviously, because if we're going to go from start to end, we need to know how far along in the process we are. So a timer of some sort has to exist. And all we're going to do is time.delta time. And we're just going to do a straight linear shot for now. If we want to do other crazy curves and stuff, we can. But for now, we'll just do one set and we'll leave it at that. Let's see here. So the position of this thing is going to be equal to, we're going to lerp between the start position, the end position, and what is effectively the time alive divided by the time to target. So this should give us a 0 to 1 range. If you think about time alive as 0 and time to target being 1, we are then going to just linearly walk across from end to end and be done with it. And then, obviously, if time alive is greater than or equal to greater than time to target, let's just destroy the game object this is attached to and return. Pretty simple. Projectiles are always fun in their pure simplicity, and it's really nice to be able to do something so straightforward. So that sphere that we made, wherever it went, oh, I put it in the spell effects, didn't I? Here is our sphere. We're going to tack on this mesh. Where'd it go? Mesh projectile, yeah. And you'll note, nothing in here. Nothing to allow us to mess with any part of this, because this is something that should get initialized when it's generated, not handled in the editor at runtime. So it's good to have this empty, because if I put this somewhere and I realize that, it should help me note that, hey, nothing should actually be here, and I'm doing this incorrectly. Attaching it to a prefab is fine, because we'll do the initialization after, but otherwise, I don't think I should need that anywhere else. Okay, so I say cast spell. Cast spell should immediately do a few things. So it says the person casts the spell. We are going to then say generate a projectile template. So there's our new projectile template. We're going to say projectile dot get component. We know the component pretty much has to have a mesh projectile. So I guess if it doesn't have it, we need to notice that too. Let's see here. We go into our... So first off, I guess if the projectile script is real, and I should check along the way too, if each step along the way, we just need to make sure that the previous step is also true. If the projectile is true, if... Actually, I'm not going to be so worried about if the projectile script isn't true. Because if you don't have a projectile, that's fine. If your projectile doesn't have a projectile script on it, now something's wrong. But we'll set it anyway. If the projectile script exists, when you want a game object, you can just call instantiate without the game object. Oh, that's kind of cool. I'm kind of a fan of using the with game object version, but for the sake of... interesting. Interesting. So they have a default for game objects. Because I'm not a fan of the other object-based ones, but if it just does game objects, then fine. Cool. Thanks for the heads up. Nice to know. We take our projectile script... We say initialize with the following values. Probably want the caster transform. And we're going to target the target. And we know there's at least... what, 1 or 2 seconds of wait. Let's see what a 3-second throw looks like. And attach this to our Firebolt spell. Here's Firebolt. You. Did I not change its name? Is it still like Sphere? Yeah, it is. Okay, that's fine. Sphere. Hey. Alright, so let's get in a fight. Warrior, Rogue, you guys get to dodge. I'm going to cast one at you. And one at you. Back there. Oh! Interesting. She doesn't have a bounding box, so I can't throw spells at her. Okay, so first off, the ball is in the ground. So you'll note, there's our Firebolt. Let's see here. We can fix this a little bit by either adding a subnode to it and shifting the whole thing up slightly. Or the other thing we can do... Because everyone's target is going to be pretty much at their face... I'm thinking it's still going to continue to be the best if I just do the node change. So, hey, look, here's our sphere. What I'm going to do is, here's an empty prefab that should not be subnoded. So this is going to be our Firebolt effect. It really isn't, but whatever. we attach this underneath and we push it up a little bit in height. So we'll say, let's push it 3 units up and then bring it back down to the ground. So that now we can see it's going to sit healthy and well above the height. Maybe 3 is a little high. Maybe we'll bring it down to like 2.5. That looks decent. And we're going to shift the mesh projectile actually out to the firebolt effect, at which point this one can bugger off. This one can go here. So now we just update our spell. And you can see how this might generate a lot of content for us, but it's not going to be that bad because luckily for all the content that it's going to cause us to generate. Yeah, okay, she has no bounding box. That's an issue. Add component. Physics. Let's go with a capsule collider. Bring in its radius. And I might have to shift this around to get it right, but it shouldn't be the end of the world. Ah, okay. There we go. Much better. Little too tall. There we go. That looks just about right. That should be good enough for now. That's all we really need more than anything else, is just some kind of collider attached to this. Just so we can throw spells at her too. I appreciate my NPCs not being completely spell there we go. That can go a little quicker too. That's the other thing. 3 seconds, way too long. So let's drop it to say 1.5 seconds. Give it the time so the player can see the cast, see the effect, but not have to worry quite so much about every other detail of it. I kind of regret giving them this AoE attack because it takes so long for them to execute. Oh my gosh. Ow. Oh my god. They're both doing it. Of all things. Let's make Rob sit here and wait the longest amount of time possible. And we're not even going to deal a ton of damage or anything worrying. It's just going to be incredibly annoying. Okay. I need to put speed ups on some of this. Actually, I'm still kind of thinking that we could go a little faster. Not a ton, but faster enough that it doesn't feel like it's just kind of floating through the air and that anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together could dodge it. Firebolt for you, firebolt for you. Hey, look at that, I can cast spells on her. That looks a lot better. I like the move speed of that. It's not so quick that it just immediately goes, but it's not so slow that it also causes it to sit there and kind of float through the air and the player sitting there going, come on, I want it to go. I want it to die. Sweet. Just for kicks, and because we can. Let's see here. I thought... trying to think. I'm going to look through the fairy's set of goodies that she came with. Because I could have sworn she also had a... where did her stuff go? She should be under models. Oh, forest creature models. Duh. I could have sworn that she came with some fancy effects. And I want to make sure that if any of those are projectiles, that I can get projectiles in for the monsters as well. Okay, so I do see prefabs for the fairies, and I see textures for projectiles. Ooh, shiny. Alright, let's get her throwing these back at the player. So the enemies don't use the same types of spells that other things do. The characters do. So we're going to add a projectile effect. And pretty much any time. I think they should only cast one projectile, just so it doesn't look insane when they proceed to like multicast a ton of things. So we're going to do very similar things to last time. So if it's not equal to null, I'm going to use Regathian's, I probably didn't say that right, but I'm going to use Regathian's tip here, not put in the specialization. In fact, let's just... How many times do I use that in a lot of different places. Let's just rip that out in all those different places. Okay, those all look good. Cool. So now, all of these just say instantiate. Sweet. So, we grab the projectile, we grab the component of our mesh projectile that is attached to it, and guys, if you have any questions, if I'm doing anything oddly, please ask away or let me know. I'm happy to describe what I can or add more detail if I'm being unclear about certain things. The reason I'm doing this check on whether the projectile script is valid is that if I don't actually have a projectile script attached, but I have some other effect turned on, I want to make sure that it still goes, and that it doesn't break anything. Yeah. Initialize. Where the start is going to be the character's position, the end going to be the character they're targeting, and we'll use the single second cast time. We do know that at bare minimum we currently get about 2 seconds unless the player is mashing buttons and doing things. I almost forgot one more thing. We have to actually grab the fairy model and attach something. So she's already got, let's see, a punch effect, a thorns effect. Let's just do something for single target. So new script, there's a combat action, there's going to be Mental saying, I often use class constructors and use some class new equals a new class, but it seems like Unity doesn't like that. What would I rather do? So Unity wants everything to go through its GameObject instantiate or through the add component call. So if this is something that you can just attach to a component, then do that. If it's not, then you might have to make it its own GameObject. Now there are some things that if it's not a mono behavior and if it's not a component of anything, then you can get away with calling the constructors. You just have to make sure that it has no ties to Unity in terms of its subclassing structure. So if it doesn't subclass from anything Unity has, then you can safely use your constructors. So it really depends on what your use case is for using constructors inside of Unity that aren't attached to Unity. Trying to think of another spell. Thorns is a good, like, blast, but I'm trying to think of a point spell that we could use here to take care of things. But something still somewhat natural. Whoop, I can't spell, but there we go. Acid Splash is a decent nature-y but point target spell, at least in my opinion. Attacks a single target. There's no animation variable or particle. Actually, yes, there is an animation variable. I'm going to use the throw projectile again, but this time we're going to attach that. We're not actually going to do the firebolt effect. We're going to put together the new object right here and then use that. So models, VFX. I actually think, yeah, these are prefabs. I don't even have to worry about these. So let's just attach this straight up and be done with it. So projectile. So here's our, let's see, blue, pink. She's already pink. Let's have her throw pink projectiles. Pink, deadly, angry projectiles, I might add. And because Acid Splash is a spell, I'm tempted to do something like this to it. Okay, delete that fairy. But now all fairies should have things. Hey, Moldy Moss. Mental's adding on by saying, I currently have a class equals new class and a bunch of arguments in the signature. How do I pass in those values when I instantiate since I can't really use a constructor? So kind of the same way I've done it, you can either have it collect those values inside the start function, which is what Unity would prefer you to do. The other thing you can do is if someone else is instantiating this, like it sounds like, you can call you can make a public instantiate function, and that public instantiate function should allow you to add all the variables you want. So kind of the same way I'm using my my projectiles here. Okay, so I see the object, but I realize that we didn't put a mesh projectile attached to it. Whoopsies. Let's get that attached. It's one of those things you recognize it after the fact and kind of go, ah, crap. There we go. Try this again. And then now let's hope she casts that Acid Splash. Spell fight. That's pretty much what's going on here. Ooh. Morning, Lemony Fresh. Glad to have you guys all here. Because otherwise, I'd be sitting here just waiting for these animations to run. I also love how the animations desync, and the moment they do, these imps get so much creepier with the way they like bounce and look around and do things. Oh my gosh. There we go. Cool. You two get to dodge. You are going to continue casting Firebolt on these imps, because I'm waiting for this this fairy to cast. Okay. Interesting. So I saw her cast the object, but it sat at her feet. the entire time. Guys, what happened? I cast Heal Wounds on the mage. He's not regaining health. Why is Cure Wounds not working? Make a note for myself. Actually, no. Let's just... Oh. Because... Haha, in attempting to cast a spell, we're finding a case where a spell projectile effect doesn't exist. I forgot this. Okay, it's in local simulation space, so it should be attached to and inheriting off of the position of the object that it's attached to. So let's actually get these little guys out of this fight, because this is actually getting really annoying to take those out each time. Only one monster. All I care about. Yeah, stop punching. Come on. Casts thorns, don't care. More thorns, don't care. I'm tempted to temporarily remove her extra other spells. Just temporarily. You can no longer punch and no longer cast thorns. Hey, look at that. So note how it creates the projectile and then does nothing with it. Even though I have a feeling that, okay, cool. I caught it with the projectile. The projectile exists. So the mesh projectile script should be going. But it doesn't seem to be moving at all. Let's see. Combat action, combat effect, combat script. Let's just dump that there. Oh, and we should probably attach this to the Unity debugger. Just, you know, as part of the exercise. Okay, so she casts it. The projectile script exists. So if we look at the position, oh, it looks like she casts it on herself. Who's calling this? What does my call stack look like? Call stack. Why are you terrible? Specifically. Okay, sorry, don't mean to. Here's the start code. Oh. Okay, so in the start coroutine choice, why is she casting that on herself? That isn't the case at all. Where are we going wrong here? The combat action. Oh, it's going from our transform to our character. That's why. Don't mind me. Just, why don't we just, kill the debug. Also say targets. For now, since we pretty much know the target is going to be somebody in the party, probably. This seems like the best way to handle this. Let's think about that for 1 sec before I do that. Yeah, that should be fine. And we just need to do the same thing to the fairy's projectile that we did to the other projectile. So I'm going to drag this into the scene. It's somewhere here, I promise. I'm just gonna call this the fairy projectile. And this should not be there, but it should be the other way around. I'm also going to remove this component and add it to here. Here's our mesh projectile. And this is going to go under our prefabs folder, under spell effects. Not that one, this one. Oh, we're also probably going to need to shift this up a unit and a half. Get that out of there. Okay, so we've got that. Where'd that fairy go? Prefabs, NPCs, fairy. You need the fairy projectile. And that should do the trick. Let's see if that works. We jump into our fairy, we rip out the moves that we don't like. I keep doing this each time because I don't want to pull them out of her base template. There we go. So it works a lot better, but you'll note it's still right up against the ground. So let's see here. It's at least moving along the ground, but we're still not quite... Okay, it looks like she's still using the old projectile, which is not right. Why are you not using the new projectile? Oh, because I attached the fairy projectile to the wrong object. That's why. Which also means that that VFX thing still has a projectile attached to it, which is not good. You, and you, and you. You don't need this mesh projectile. That should just be an effect, essentially. That's what I'm saying, is I want the effect to be solely for that spell, and then everything else to kind of take care of itself. Okay. Where the heck is it? Oh, it's because she's using other attacks. I was like, where is it? Why don't I see it? So it's still along the ground, really? Of course, I can't quite catch it. Okay, so it's moving. But despite the fact that it should be up above the ground, it really isn't. And it doesn't really last long enough for me to be able to catch it. Combat action, let's see here. You take 5 seconds. I want to be able to see it, just so I know it works the first time, and then from there we can do the fixings on who and where and what it should do. Forgot about that. While she rips up my party, I'm just gonna take these spells off of her like I keep doing. Huh, it's raining outside. Awesome. California needs it. So why is it still attached to the ground? And what can I do to shift this higher? Because it seems weird. We've got the fairy, and then we've got this projectile. Now, the projectile itself, it's fine that it's on the ground because we're moving from point to point. The problem is, this shift upwards doesn't seem to be changing its coordinates at all. Like, even when I lift the thing up, it still doesn't want to be there. Or when I attempt to lift the darn thing up. That's the other problem. I mean, our other course of action could be we have a cast from and a cast to point, and we just use those. And that might not be the worst thing ever. At least that way we wouldn't have to keep attaching objects like we currently are, and that might actually be kind of nice. So let's do that. Let's try that. So the party, what I'm going to do... So currently this is what the party setup looks like, and it's kind of hard to tell what's going on because there's multiple cameras and sound sources and all that crap. But what I do want to do here... In fact, what is this sound? Oh, it's all the inventory open sounds. Okay guys, unfortunately I'm low on time, so I don't have time to keep mucking with this, but what we're going to do, and how I'm probably going to end up finishing this tonight, is I'm going to have a spellcast start that's going to live underneath the party. And what that's going to be is it's going to live at the same party position, but it's going to live just under the camera. So the camera lives at 0 and 1, so we're going to set this to 0 and 0.5, so it'll cast from underneath the camera and go forwards, and I'm going to cast all spells to and from that. So it's actually not a start, it's a spellcast point. And then all of the AI is going to have a cast to point as well. So the upside is that means I can cast spells out of the AI's hands, and it will look a lot better. It also means I need more information in here. So I'm going to put this into its own projectile information. But we have the here's the start point, and this actually, we can just use a transform for this. And then we know what the endpoint's going to look like, so we don't even need to worry about that too much. So, what did I call it? This should be a projectile start point. I'll just call it the projectile start. It's kind of obvious it's a point because it's a transform, so we don't exactly need tons of extra information here. And also, having the party own a reference to its own... Here's the transform for the spell point is pretty easy and straightforward. It's the easiest thing we can do to make life a little easier. Projectile start. Oh, sorry, dot position. Don't mind me. Okay, so party, first off, we have to add the information to you. Here is our spellcast point. That's part 1. We got lightning and thunder going on out here. Crazy. Okay, so there's that, and then the other part that we need is going to be what? We need the nymph to understand how to cast the spell, and then we need to reattach the mesh projectile to this. So under spell effects, we can once again safely delete this, as long as our fairy also understands the change. So the fairy needs a few things. That VFX for the projectile, and the start point from which the fairy casts spells. So where's that arm in? Actually, do I have a hand? Palm gizmo. I like it. So the right palm gizmo. Dang it, where did that go? palm. And that should go down here. Arm, palm, there. And I can't help but notice that I put this in the wrong place again. Oh crap. There we go. Okay, so we apply what we got. Walk into this fight. She casts the spell. Oh, she casts the wrong spell. No punching. No thorn spells. Please stop those. Boom. Haha, look at that go. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now we speed it up. Whoops. I always forget that. There we go. Alright, guys. That is it. I do have to take off for work. Thank you for joining me, guys. I'll be back tomorrow morning, my usual time, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard. Please feel free, if you like what you see, if you like watching game dev in progress, hit the little heart below the stream. That'll add you to my follow list. And you'll get little emails every time I come online, and you can keep in touch and see how things are going. If you're here for the first time, or if you're here, if you've been here for a while, and you wonder how I've gotten to this point, there is also, I'm going to throw my YouTube link into the chat, because I've actually not fixed that yet. But feel free, watch all the videos on YouTube to see how I got from start to where we currently are right now. You'll kind of see each step along the way. The 2 streams that aren't up are yesterday's stream and today's. So we'll get to those. Those are coming up next. But thanks, guys, for joining me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Take care.